And welcome everybody to another edition of Historical Geocaching on the Road with Geocacher T and Photobug from Chattanooga, Tennessee. Currently visiting the Greenfield Village, an awesome outdoor history museum in Dearborn, Michigan. Come along with me as I hear Theodore Roosevelt himself give a campaign speech. Okay, you just hear that music. That's part of the we're getting down into that Ragtime street fair thing they're having today. Might be able to come back later, or it looks like we'll be going past a little bit of it on our way to the Heinz House and Theodore Roosevelt's campaign speech. Okay, well, I have the Heinz House in view. I'm going to stop over here for a second to this Sir John Bennett's sweet shop thingy. Alright, probably show you something cool. This is Sir John Bennett likes the story of Gog and Magog, and these guys on the hour, tong off the hour. I want to say this is a scale model. Kind of neat.
Save yourself behind yourself.
Like there's some people there. Automobile parking 20 cents. Funny.
See you later. Good morning.
Good morning. So who are you?
Who am I?
Yes.
I am here demonstrating the newest technological advance in entertainment.
What's that?
These actually show pictures that move.
Wow.
They are, in fact, I believe, the wave of the future.
Wow.
Who knows? Pretty soon every town will have some.
How are we doing, friends?
Good point.
Be able to go and entertain yourself with moving pictures.
10 cents, you get to see Lady Annabelle do her wonderful dance to the butterfly over there. Some say it's provocative, some say it's hardy. You have to spend your own time and give me that little advice over there.
Now I have a question for you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Did you realize that I am now making a moving picture of you that I'm going to be putting on the internet?
Impossible, sir. Impossible. Does not exist. You'd have to take separate pictures of me.
Okay, that was funny running into those guys, having a little fun with them. Now I am at the Heinz House, right here, and this H.J. Heinz's products were first developed in this house, built in 1854 in Sharpsburg, Pennsylvania. And actually, horseradish, not ketchup, was the first product that Heinz produced. But anyway, I'm going to stay out here and hopefully catch a glimpse of Theodore Roosevelt soon. I think this is Henry Ford himself. I think that is. Let's see if he gets out.
us.
Very good.
Yep. And we hope we can look forward to your vote in the coming election.
Very good. Thank you.
Very well indeed.
Pass rate and
Oh, look at this. A marvelous crowd. Mr. King's done his job, no doubt about it. Bully to see you, folks. Bully to see you.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to present to you the man who will be the next president of the United States after the election of 1912, Colonel Theodore Roosevelt, progressive candidate for president.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Oh, there he is. I require a young fellow. Well, if I could have your help, sir, I'd appreciate it. Are you available? All right, that's fine. That's fine. Is there another young fellow in the crowd maybe that might be interested?
Anybody?
There's a fellow back there might help. I see a young fellow there. Good. I'm going to leave this with you, miss, if I can. Thank you, Mr. Martin. Appreciate that. Ladies and gentlemen, it's good to be here back in Greenfield Village. We have a big question in front of us in this election of 12. And I represent the Progressive Party, the Bull Moose Party.
thank you so much.
When asked, I threw my hat in the ring. That's what I told the reporters. I felt fit as Buff, and I feel fit as a bull moose. Now, you probably wonder what started all this. And I'd like to thank, before I begin, I'd like to thank my campaign manager, Mr. King, and Mr. Martin, my security, and of course it's lovely to have my cousin, May Mullen, here. And I'd like to thank Governor Osborne for the kind words he sent me in a telegram earlier today. I appreciate being here in the great state of Michigan again. Well, this is what started it all, ladies and gentlemen. And I hope you'll bear with me. This is called the New Nationalism. Speech I gave earlier, but I think it warrants saying again. So, if you'll bear with me. Come here today to commemorate the long struggle of the rights of man. The long struggle for the uplift of humanity. Our country, this great republic, means nothing unless it means the triumph of real democracy. The triumph of popular government. And in the long run of an economic system under which each man shall be guaranteed the opportunity to show the best that there is in him. That is why the history of America is now the central feature of the history of the world. For the world has set its face hopefully toward our democracy. And oh, my fellow citizens, each one of you carries on your shoulders not only the burden of doing well for the sake of your country, but the burden of doing well and seeing that this nation does well for the sake of mankind. There have been two great crises in our country's history. First, when it was formed, and then again when it was perpetuated. In the time of stress and strain which culminated in the Civil War, you men of the Grand Army, you men who fought through the Civil War, not only did you justify your generation, and not only did you render your life worth living for our generation, but you justified the wisdom of Washington and Washington's colleagues. If this republic had been founded by them only to be split asunder into fragments when the strain came, then the judgment of the world would have been that Washington's work was not worth doing. It was you who crowned Washington's work as you carried to the achievement the high purpose of Abraham Lincoln. It was the result of this struggle which determined that the great experiment of democratic government on a national scale should succeed and not fail. In name, we had the Declaration of Independence of 1776, but we gave the lie by our acts to the words of the Declaration of Independence until 1865. And words count for nothing except insofar as they represent acts. This is true everywhere, but, oh my friends, it should be the truest in political life. A broken promise is bad enough in private life. It's bad enough in private life, it is worse in the field of politics. No man is worth his salt in public life who makes on the stump a pledge which he does not keep after the election. And if he makes such a pledge and does not keep it, hunt him out in public life. I care for the great deeds of the past chiefly as it spurs to drive us onward in the present. Now, the Civil War was a heroic struggle. Very much was done of good, and much also of evil. And as was inevitable, in such a period of revolution, often the same man did both good and evil. For our great good fortune as a nation, we, the people of the United States as a whole, can now afford to forget the evil, or at least to remember it without bitterness. Even in ordinary times, there are very few of us who do not see the problems of life as through a glass darkly. And when that glass is clouded by the murk of furious popular passion, the vision of the best and the bravest is dimmed. We can admire the heroic valor, the sincerity, the self-devotion shown alike by men who wore the blue and the men who wore the gray. And our sadness that such men should have to fight one another is tempered by the glad knowledge that ever hereafter their descendants shall be found fighting side by side, struggling in peace as well as in war for the uplift of our common country. As for the veterans of the Grand Army of the Republic, they deserve the honor and recognition such as is paid to no other citizens of the Republic. It is because of what you and your comrades did in the dark years that we of today walk, each of us, head erect and proud that we belong to the mightiest nation upon which the sun shines. Of that generation of men to whom we owe so much, the man to whom we owe the most is, of course, Abraham Lincoln. Part of our debt to him is because he forecast our present struggle and saw the way out. He said, and I quote, "I hold that while man exists, it is his duty to improve not only our own condition, but to assist in ameliorating mankind." And again, quote, "Labor is prior to and independent of capital. Capital is only the fruit of labor and could never have existed if labor had not first existed. Labor is the superior of capital and deserves much the higher consideration." If that remark were original with me, I should be even more strongly denounced as a communist agitator than I shall be anyhow. It's Lincoln's. It's Lincoln's. I'm only quoting it, and that is the one side. That is the side that the capitalist should hear. Now let the working man hear his side. Quote, "Capital has its rights, which are worthy of protection as any other rights, nor should this lead to a war upon the owners of property. Property is the fruit of labor. Property is desirable, is a positive good in the world." And then comes a thoroughly Lincoln-like sentence. Quote, "Let him not, who is houseless, pull down the house of another, but let him work diligently and build one for himself, thus by example assuring that his own shall be safe from violence when built." Above all in this speech, as in many others, Lincoln taught a lesson in wise kindness and charity, an indispensable lesson to us today. But this wise kindness and charity never weakened his arm or numbed his heart. In every wise struggle for human betterment, one of the main objectives, and often the only object, has been to achieve in large measure equality of opportunity. One of the chief factors in progress is the destruction of special privilege. The essence of any struggle for healthy liberty has always been, and must always be, to take from some one man or class of men the right to enjoy power or wealth or position or immunity which has not been earned by service to his or his fellows. That is what you fought for in the Civil War, and that is what we strive for now. At many stages in the advance of humanity, this conflict between the men who possess more than they have earned and the men who have earned more than they possess is the central condition of progress. In our day, it appears as the struggle of freemen to gain and hold the right of self-government, as against the special interests who twist the method of free government into machinery for defeating the popular will. At every stage and under all circumstances, the essence of the struggle is to equalize opportunity and destroy privilege. and give to the life and citizenship of every individual the highest possible value both to himself and to the Commonwealth. That is nothing new. All I ask in civil life is what you fought for in the Civil War. You never get perfect justice, but nobody grudged promotion to Grant or Sherman or Thomas or Sheridan because they earned it. The only complaint was when a man got promotion which he did not earn. Practical equality of opportunity for all citizens, when we achieve it, will have two great results. First, every man will have a fair chance to make of himself all that in him lies, to reach the highest point to which his capabilities can carry him, and to get for himself and his family substantially what he has earned. Second, equality of opportunity means that the Commonwealth will get from every citizen the highest service of which he is capable. I stand for the square deal. But when I say that I am for the square deal, I mean not merely that I stand for fair play under the present rules of the game, but that I stand for having those rules change so as to work for a more substantial equality of opportunity and of reward for equally good service. Now this means that our government, national and state, must be freed from the sinister influence and the control of special interests. Yes. Exactly as the special interests of cotton and slavery threatened our political integrity before the Civil War, so now the great special interests too often control and corrupt the men and methods of government for their own profit. We must drive the special interests out of politics. That is one of our tasks today. Every special interest is entitled to justice, full, fair, and complete. And now, mind you, if there were any attempt by mob violence to plunder and work harm to the special interest and the wealthy man, whomever he may be, for whom I have the greatest contempt, I would fight for him. And you would too if you were worth your salt. He should have justice. He should have justice. For every special interest is entitled to justice. But not one is entitled to a vote in Congress, to a voice on the bench, or to the representation in any public office. The Constitution guarantees protections to property, and we must make that promise good. But it does not give the right of suffrage to any corporation. The true friend of property, the true conservative, is he who insists that property shall be the servant and not the master of the Commonwealth. The citizens of the United States must effectively control the mighty commercial forces which they themselves called into being. There can be no effective control of corporations while their political activity remains. To put an end to it will neither be short nor an easy task, but it can be done. We must have complete and effective publicity of corporate affairs so that people may know beyond peradventure whether the corporations obey the law and whether their management entitles them to the confidence of the public. It is necessary that laws should be passed to prohibit the use of corporate funds directly or indirectly for political purposes. It is still more necessary that such laws should be thoroughly enforced. Corporate expenditures for political purposes, and especially such expenditures by public service corporations, have supplied one of the principal sources of corruption in our political affairs. It has become entirely clear that we must have a government supervision of the capitalization not only of public service corporations, including particularly railways, but of all corporations doing an interstate business. I do not wish to see the nation forced into the ownership of the railways if it can be possibly avoided, and the only alternative is thoroughgoing and effective regulation. I believe that the officers, and especially the directors of corporations, should be held personally responsible when any corporation breaks the law. Hear, hear. Combinations in industry are the result of an imperative economic law which cannot be repealed by political legislation. The effort at prohibiting all combinations has substantially failed. The way out lies not in attempting to prevent such combinations, but in completely controlling them in the interest of the public welfare. For that purpose, the Federal Bureau of Corporations is an agency of first importance. Its powers and therefore its efficiency, as well as that of the Interstate Commerce Commission, should be largely increased. The absence of effective state and especially national restraint upon unfair money-getting has tended to create a small class of enormously wealthy and economically powerful men whose chief object is to hold and increase their power. The prime need is to change the conditions which enable these men to accumulate power, which is not for the general welfare that they should hold or exercise. We grudge no man a fortune which represents his own power and sagacity, when exercised with entire regard to the welfare of his fellows. Again, comrades over there, you did not grudge. You take the lesson from your own experience. Not only did you not grudge, but you gloried in the promotion of the great generals who gained their promotion by leading the army to victory. So it is with us. We grudge no man a fortune in civil life if it is honorably obtained and well used. It is not even that it should have gained without doing damage to the community. We should permit it to be gained only so long as the gaining represents benefit to the community. This, I know, implies a policy of a far more active governmental interference with social and economic conditions in the country than we have yet had. But I think we have got to face the fact that such an increase in the government control is now necessary. No man should receive a dollar unless that dollar has been fairly earned. Every dollar received should represent a dollar's worth of service rendered. Not gambling in stocks, but service rendered. The really big fortune, the swollen fortune, by the mere fact of its size, acquires qualities which differentiate in kind as well as in degree from what is possessed by men of relatively small means. Therefore, I believe in a graduated income tax on big fortunes, and in another tax which is far more easily collected and far more effective. A graduated inheritance tax on big fortunes, properly safeguarded against evasion and increasing rapidly in amount with the size of the estate. It is hardly necessary for me to repeat that I believe in an efficient army and a navy large enough to secure for us abroad that respect which is the surest guarantee of peace. A word of special warning to my fellow citizens who are as aggressive as I am, I hope. I want them to keep up their interest in our internal affairs, and I want them also continually to remember Uncle Sam's interest abroad. Justice and fair dealing among nations rest upon principles identical with those which control justice and fair dealing among the individuals of which nations are composed. With the vital exception that each nation must do its own part in international police work. If you get into trouble here, you can call for the police, but if Uncle Sam gets into trouble, he has got to be his own policeman. And I want to see him strong enough to encourage the peaceful aspirations of others, to other peoples in connection with us. I believe in national friendships and heartiest goodwill to all nations. But national friendships, like those between men, must be founded on respect as well as on liking, on forbearance as well as upon trust. I should be heartily ashamed of any American who did not try to make the American government act as justly towards the other nations in international relations as he himself would act toward any individual in private relations. I should be heartily ashamed to see us wrong the weaker power, and I should hang my head forever if we tamely suffered wrong from a stronger power. Now, of conservation, I shall speak more at length elsewhere. Conservation means development as much as it does protection. I recognize the right and duty of this generation to develop and use the natural resources of our land. But I do not recognize the right to waste them, or to rob by wasteful use the generations that come after us. Moreover, I believe that the natural resources must be used for the benefit of all our people, and not monopolized for the benefit of the few. And here again is another case in which I am accused of taking a revolutionary attitude. That is one of the fundamental reasons why the special interest should be driven out of politics. Of all the questions which can come before this nation, short of the actual preservation of its existence in a great war, there is none which compares in importance with the great central task of leaving this land even a better land for our descendants than it is for us, and training them into a better race to inhabit the land and pass it on. Conservation is a great moral issue, for it involves the patriotic duty of ensuring the safety and continuance of this nation. But I think we may still go further. The right to regulate the use of wealth in the public interest is universally admitted. Let us admit also the right to regulate the terms and conditions of labor, which is the chief element of wealth, directly in the interest of the common good. The fundamental thing to do for every man is to give him a chance to reach a place in which he will make the greatest possible contribution to the public welfare. Understand what I say there. Give him a chance. not push him up if he will not be pushed. Help any man who stumbles. If he lies down, it is a poor job to try and carry him. But if he is a worthy man, try your best to see that he gets a chance to show the worth that is in him. No man can be a good citizen unless he has a wage more than sufficient to cover the bare cost of living and hours of labor short enough so that after his day's work is done, he will have time and energy to bear his share in the management of the community, to help in carrying the general load. We keep countless men from being good citizens by the conditions of life which we surround them. We need comprehensive workmen's compensation acts, both state and national laws to regulate child labor and work for women. And especially, we need in our common schools not merely education and book learning, but also practical training for daily life and work. We need to enforce better sanitary conditions for our workers and to extend the use of safety appliances for our workers in industry and commerce, both within and between the states. Also, my friends, in the interest of the working man himself, we need to set our faces like men against mob violence, just as against corporate greed, against violence and injustice, lawlessness by wage workers, just as much as against lawlessness, cunning greed, and selfish arrogance of employers. If I could ask but one thing of my fellow countrymen, my request would be that wherever they go in for reform, they remember the two sides, and that they always exact justice from one side as much from the other. I have small use for the public servant who can always see and denounce the corruption of the capitalist, but who cannot persuade himself, especially before elections, to say a word about lawless mob violence. And I have equally small use for the man, be he a judge on the bench, or editor of a great paper, or wealthy and influential private citizen, who can see clearly enough to denounce the lawlessness of mob violence, but whose eyes are closed so that he is blind when the question is one of corruption in business on a gigantic scale. Also, remember what I said about excess and reformer and reactionary alike. If the reactionary man who thinks of nothing but the rights of property could have his way, he would bring about a revolution. And one of my chief fears in connection with our progress comes because I do not want to see our people, for lack of proper leadership, compelled to follow men whose intentions are excellent, but whose eyes are a little too wild to make it really safe to trust them. In Kansas, there is one paper which habitually denounces me as the tool of Wall Street, and at the same time frantically repudiates the statement that I am a socialist on the ground that it's an unwarranted slander of socialists. I do not ask for over-centralization, but I do ask that we work in a spirit of broad and far-reaching nationalism when we work for what concerns our people as a whole. We are all Americans. Our common interests are as broad as the continent. I speak to you here in Greenfield Village exactly as I would speak in New York or Georgia, where the most vital problems are those which affect us all alike. The national government belongs to the whole American people, and where the whole American people are interested, that interest can be guarded effectively only by the national government. The betterment which we seek must be accomplished, I believe, mainly through the national government. The American people are right in demanding that the new nationalism, without which we cannot hope to deal with new problems, the new nationalism puts the national need before sectional or personal advantage. It is impatient of the utter confusion that results from local legislatures attempting to treat national issues as local issues. It is still more impatient of the impotence which springs from over-division of governmental powers, the impotence which makes it impossible for local self-interest or for legal cunning, hired by wealthy special interests to bring national activities to a deadlock. This new nationalism regards the executive power as the steward of public welfare. It demands of the judiciary that it shall be interested primarily in human welfare rather than in property, just as it demands that the representative body shall represent all the people rather than one class or section of the people. I believe in shaping the ends of government to protect property as well as human welfare, of course. Of course, economic welfare is necessary, for a man must pull his own weight and be able to support his family. I know well that the reformers must not bring upon the people economic ruin, or the reforms themselves will go down in ruin. But we must be ready to face temporary disaster, whether or not brought on by those who will war against us to the knife. Those who oppose all reform will do well to remember that ruin in its worst form is inevitable if our national life brings us nothing better than swollen fortunes for the few, and the triumph in both politics and business of a sordid and selfish materialism. If our political institutions were perfect, they would absolutely prevent the political domination of money in any part of our affairs. We need to make our political representatives more quickly and sensitively responsive to the people whose servants they are. More direct action by the people in their own affairs under proper safeguards is vitally necessary. The direct primary is a step in this direction. It is particularly important that all monies received or expended for campaign purposes should be publicly accounted for, not only after the election, but before the election as well. Political action must be made simpler, easier, and freer from confusion for every citizen. I believe that the prompt removal of unfaithful or incompetent public servants should be made easy and sure in whatever way experience shall show to be the most expedient in any given class of cases. One of the fundamental necessities in a representative government such as ours is to make certain that the men to whom the people delegate their power shall serve the people by whom they are elected, and not the special interests. I believe that every national officer, elected or appointed, should be forbidden to perform any service or receive any compensation, directly or indirectly, from interstate corporations. And a similar provision could not fail to be useful within the states. So it is in our civil life, no matter how honest and decent we are in our private lives. If we do not have the right kind of law and the right kind of administration of the law, we cannot go forward as a nation. In the last analysis, the most important elements in any man's career must be the sum of those qualities which, in the aggregate, we speak of as character. We must have the right kind of character. Character that makes a man, first of all, a good man in the home, a good father, a good husband, that makes a man a good neighbor. The prime problem of our nation is to get the right type of good citizenship. And to get it, we must have progress. And our public men must be genuinely progressive. We must treat each man on his worth and merits as a man. We must see that each is given a square deal because he's entitled to no more and should receive no less. We demand that big business give the people a square deal. In return, we must insist that when anyone engaged in big business honestly endeavors to do right, he shall himself be given a square deal. A new nationalism built on character and a square deal will lead us to prosperity, justice, and strength in this century. These are absolute ideals that should be the bedrock of reform in our national goals. Our country offers the most wonderful example of democratic government on a giant scale that the world has ever seen. The peoples of the world are watching to see whether we succeed or fail. We believe in all our hearts in democracy, in the capacity of the people to govern themselves, and we are bound to succeed, for success means not only our own triumph, but the triumph of the cause of the rights of the people throughout the world, and the uplifting of the banner of hope for all the nations of mankind. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. God bless you. God bless this great country.
Ladies and gentlemen, Theodore Roosevelt, progressive candidate for president.
Thank you both. Bullet.
For those interested, the president will be throwing out the first pitch of the ball game this afternoon at 1:30 on Walnut Grove. And anyone interested in a more personal acquaintance with the president is welcome to come over. Come along. We'd be happy to meet you.
Hey, folks. Good day.
Well, thank you everybody for watching this video. I really appreciate it. Be sure to check out my blog at www.historicalgeocaching.blogspot.com for details on this video and others, as well as just about anything geocaching or history related. This is Geocacher TM Photobook signing out. I'm having a blast with Bast. Looks like we got some good music today.